Episode 288, T minus, hopefully, probably about 4 hours until the Pro-Am goes live. If you're watching this on Premiere, welcome to the Overwatch Kickoff Pro-Am Extravaganza. Maybe we'll have a thing, maybe we won't. By the time you hear this, hopefully, Custa won't be the only one leaking things. Hello, hi, welcome.
Hello.
Kenobi's here.
I'm here. I'm here to
Yiska's
talk
here.
about.
Hello.
Here to talk about Pro-Am.
Pro-Am is on the table, as well as some other housekeeping chores that we have to do that we've not neglected, but you know, there's some things that we've left on the table strategically as well. So, how's everybody feeling? How are we doing? Overwatch League is sort of starting soon. It's officially.
It's nice to have Overwatch esports back. I'll tell you that. It's exciting. It's a good time.
It is.
Pro-Am calls were fun, at least for the majority of it. I think there was like some at the start where I was like, I don't know what the meta is going to be. Is it always going to be this Bastion stuff? And then they evolved, and then I was very happy because I'm not the biggest fan of the Bastion Rush competition. Let me tell you that.
That's saying it lightly. That's for sure. Yiska,
it works, but
it do work, and you know, Contenders Korea started recently, so you know, there is some reason to believe that maybe they're onto something there, because we did see it in those games. Yiska, how are we feeling? Are we amped? Are we apathetic?
I'm hyped for some games, not all. I'm not hyped for best of threes. I'm not hyped for not having created enough hype, but we do our best, and yeah, I'm just happy to watch some Overwatch. Hopefully that will fill the Overwatch esports shaped hole in my soul. We'll see.
We will see. Maybe it'll be enough. Maybe he has a icebox where his heart used to be. That being said, shitty 90s music aside, it really wasn't shitty. It was actually kind of a banger. Before we get into the episode, we do have to thank our patron producers. So episode 288 is brought to you by Battlecrab, Refine Bean, Bronze Babu How, Picasso, Chris R34444, Kasha67, Lotion, Porkchop Sammy, Rexane, Unequaled King, Volamel and Sugar High, and our YouTube members, IMDRW, Brother Adam L, Sagi Fumi, Isem Jello, Element 6, AK, and Chris R. Again, thank you so much. If you can't support the show monetarily, download the podcast. It helps us. Leave a comment, all that good stuff. All those metrics make the show a little bit more discoverable. Also, YouTube podcasts. So if you want to do that, you could do that too. It's audio, I believe. So check that out. We've got some things to discuss. We have brother in the top left, Mr. Juice, the one and only Chinese Stan himself is here. So we cannot. It would be remiss if we did not talk about the Hangzhou Spark and the official roster as it has been reported or announced at this point. Kenobi, is this the team that leads APAC this season?
I mean, if I said no, then that'd be weird, and someone's probably holding a gun off screen. I think that this is probably the best team that is in APAC. The thing about it is like, I think on paper for sure, that's like the biggest thing for me is that on paper, when you look at this team, I mean, obviously like it's like the Shy Leave duo, which is like, you know, already probably one of the best duos, just not even in APAC, but in Overwatch League, just in general. Both of those players, I think there's not really a meta I would say that I would be worried about them ever fitting into, because of the fact that like Leave can play pretty much anything and Shy can cover quite a breadth of other heroes himself. Would have liked to have probably seen like a third DPS. You know, Jinmu is kind of just still out there, not signed. Potentially have something like that in there. But I think like overall, when I look at this roster, this is like a top 3 roster. Now it like without a doubt top 3 roster in APAC. The thing I have to be wary of is that this is the Hangzhou Spark, and they have a tendency to just play really poorly. Have they gotten rid of that now that Ray is the coach? They have Creed. They have like this old. They have like the MY kind of style is followed to like Spark now, away from like what Chengdu was. And is that enough to like break the curse of the kind of bad times Spark have had in the past, because they did finish off really strong because the meta was literally like perfect for them. Like Gushui Winston, Alpha Yi Genji, and then or Alpha Yi Reaper, and then like a Shy Sojourn. Perfect. And they got 4th, if I memory serves. So yeah, I think that this is the team that probably should be competing for the top spot in APAC. I think like I would love to see like them versus Dallas. That's a matchup that I am like chomping at the bit to see. APAC I think is going to be sick this year. A lot of teams that I'm really interested in seeing, especially with like the new format where there's like contenders teams possibly in there, because there are some really good contenders teams that I think will make some noise in APAC. So yeah, this team off the bat, I think on paper, the 6-man roster that they have with the coaching and with the staff easily should be one of the best teams.
And for anybody who maybe is out of the loop or is not familiar with some of the, the teams or, former players that, Spark is kind of coalescing at this point, the roster as listed as of, today, as of recording, is Gushus Shy 20, which is formerly Ninja and Elsa, goes by a few names, former Chengdu Hunters player. I'm sure you remember. Leave, Langsa, and Monk. So this is a team. This is basically the Chinese super team, right? Like if there was ever a time to see, Chinese Overwatch esports shine, it is on the Hangzhou Spark for the 2023 season. Yiska, in your opinion, is this a team that could hold a candle to the Dallas Fuel, the 2023 or 2022 defending champions?
Yes. So, okay, they can hold a candle. Yeah, I still give it to Dallas in terms of APAC most likely to be number 1. Just because, like, I trust Rush. I think the core is still there.
Okay.
Of course, like you can have your reservations with the backline. I'm less concerned really about that. I think like all of those had in the past at least demonstrated some potential. I was skeptical of Edison as well, and that also came back flying into my face. So I'm less concerned there. Of course, we also don't know their 6th, so that's a big one that we'll have to eventually figure out for Dallas, and that also shapes my opinion significantly. I just assume it's going to be a solid player and factor that in. But otherwise, yeah, I think, honestly, here's my hopium for APAC. I honestly think that just as a product, as like a content product, and also low-key, the fun you're having with the teams, they're not high quality. You're not going to like enjoy them for the clear-cut top performances that NA will be capable of theoretically, okay? Like the density of great teams is lower in APAC, but
sure.
I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for content. A lot of that I hear like being plotted. Let's see if that comes about, but there's a lot of potential, right? In physical, esports in the physical space. And if we can actually make that work, it could be super dope. Also think like I talked to Tasmo. Tasmo said they are sort of close to Seoul. They're already talking to the Infernal about doing like content together, so that would be fun. Like all of that stuff could be very interesting, and also because theoretically for me, APAC is the more time zone friendly broadcast. It's definitely something I'll tune into. Maybe not for every single game, but I'm also like cautiously optimistic where the contender scene is developing. Like I like what I saw today, and yeah, I feel like I was pretty down on APAC. I'm coming around. It's like it's not like in my mind it was like, oh, everyone's going over and like so much weird shit is happening, and then okay, Dallas Fuel's going over. Okay, like Shine Leaf is actually happening. Then like the Infernal don't look bad. Seoul and Shanghai are trying like these wacky things, like that could be interesting at least, like it could be fun for different reasons. Like yeah, it's grown on me. I'm not hating.
It's kind of become in a way, must watch Overwatch. I know that at least I've been talking about that the last few shows. Like APAC is kind of my opinion, the superior product on paper. And I think, like you said, with, Void unretiring himself, coming back, Fleda's new role as a tank, Bebe being signed to the Shanghai Dragons as a player coach. There's a lot of experimenting going on, along with the increasingly optimistic view of a lot of like top contenders teams. I'm looking at Panthera, I'm looking at O2, shocking. To be in, I don't even think incredibly competitive is a fair statement. I think we could have some significant upsets pretty early on, I'd say. So APAC as a region as a whole, very, very good. I think Spark is, in a way, it does feel like a 2-horse race at the very top. It doesn't feel like there is too many other people that are, extremely close in terms of just on paper strength, in terms of on paper pedigree. Partially because, Infernal is kind of a limited team, doesn't have necessarily a full roster. Soul, while, solid, doesn't necessarily look as punchy as, the Dallas Fuel, the Hangzhou Spark, arguably, maybe even some of these contender teams. So it is a very exciting region. And yeah, I think Spark have a lot to gain from that. However, that isn't the only team that may or may not throw Yiska's predictions in a locker, a la his Edison take. The New York Excelsior today also announced their roster with, to be fair, we can criticize New York all we want. That video was kind of a banger. It was kind of heat, right?
It's really, they always have good ones.
They do always have good ones. We can say whatever the hell we want. They do come with some content. So please, just more, please. That'd be nice. I don't really care how you do. Just make some cool content, please and thank you. But the roster goes as followed. If you've lived under a rock and haven't paid attention, today the New York Excelsior announced Fitz, Shockwave, Psycho, Kellen, Halo, Lep, Aniun, hopefully I'm saying that right, and Creative as their 2023 roster. Yiska, we're going to start with you. You were kind of giving me some copium, some hopium, some that fresh rock off of the streets of New York City. Is this a team that could maybe compete?
I mean, okay, so I think it's a rocky road. I think ideally that roster just comes together and does so probably mid-January at the latest. That unfortunately didn't happen. So this is going to be an uphill battle. It's interesting for Kellen to return. That's one thing I didn't see. I think
solo tank Kellen.
I think also.
Yep.
Do I want to tackle this? I think, like, generally speaking, the NYXL have generally, even though like very often they will start out with a wild idea, they usually, bring it in and make something functional. We had the controversy around this roster that was reported, I believe, by Liz Richardson at the time at the Dot. I feel like this is the best of both worlds to a degree now. I think this is a really competitive roster with several upsides. It's going to be interesting because of the language barrier, I would imagine. But this is a well-resourced roster on paper, right? That's 8 players. It's going to be exciting to see like where they can go. I'm a little concerned for the hybridity of it. But yeah, I think I would be less so if they came together earlier. I'll also say, of course, I have some scrim insights. Hasn't been amazing, but I think there's also a lot of
leak scrims. Woo!
There's also some there's quite some teams that will probably be competing with them among those spots. I think, like, realistically, just from a talent point of view, I would say they're as good as Titans. I just don't think they have the same cohesion and like makeup in terms of like it's weird. like I inherently almost don't believe in synergy, but there's something about clickiness where I haven't seen the NYXL work as a team. I think that's more believable as the Titans.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree, but that's just maybe my own bias. Kenobi, I know that you at least have a little bit more of a fresher take on at least some of these players. Obviously, Psycho and Shockwave, I think participated in was that run it back or one of the contenders?
Yeah, they were the EXO. They were the
Yes.
EXO DPS duo.
Right.
And I mean, that EXO team was really good. Like, let's not.
They kind of blew out.
They
know,
blew out the
EU.
pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
So that's. I mean, I think that's a duo that I think can make some noise. I think I've always been a fan of Shockwave, and obviously through like the trials and tribulations that they've gone through, like going back into contenders, etc., like from Owl and like continue moving back and forth. I think that especially last year in contenders, he showed that he is like kind of heads and tails above a lot of the players that were in that region. So I think him getting picked up and Psycho along with it. Fitz is interesting because I wonder what version of Fitz are we getting? Are we getting Water 7 Fitz, or are we getting kind of this Fitz that just like is incredibly inconsistent? I think is the biggest thing, where it's like you'll see Fitz and you'll sometimes see like, oh yeah, that was that guy who like potentially could have been one of the best DPS, and then there's sometimes where he's just like non-existent, right? I sometimes don't even remember that he was on Soul. That's part of where I wonder how they're going to do that and like where he's going to fit into all of this. Not the biggest fan of Kellen as a solo tank. I think we are at the point now where you have to be incredibly gifted as a tank to be able to play solo tank, because the game is just swapped, and I don't think that there are enough teams and enough tank players that have like gotten that ability to like play everything. I think there are some like Reiner last year, besides like obviously the one Junker Queen thing, but Reiner for the most part played pretty much everything. I think there are a couple of tanks who can do that. Smurf was like the one that I would probably think of right now as like someone who I would trust to play pretty much everything and be okay at it. Kellen is not that. So I think that this team has a lot riding on what type of meta they hit. If they hit a meta where like Kellen can play like something that he's comfortable with and it's going to help the rest of the team, then yeah, I think that this team can probably make some noise against like, the lower half or like the mid-table of the league. That's where I see this team going. So on paper, Yiska's right. This team is like looks pretty good. Like you see all these names and you're like, wow, that's a lot of like good stuff that they have here. I think Anayun and Haley, both of them, from what I remember them being in contenders, and Haley has been through like Collegiate as well. I think that they're both very good. I'm a big fan of Lep as well, coming from Collegiate. I think that Lep got hung out to dry pretty hard by a lot of the community last year, which I don't think was fair to them, especially during Jotes. I think that Lep is incredibly talented, so especially as like a shot caller and stuff like that. So I think that like with this team, the biggest thing for me is like if it's Kellen, the Kellen main tank is kind of where or the Kellen only tank I should say is where I like feel like this might fall apart a little bit, because if it's like something like ball meta, which it looks like it is currently, then like I don't know if this team is gonna hang.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of bring up a good point, especially, obviously a couple hours out of Pro-Am, and we're starting to not consistently get leaked scrims, but, from the scrims that we've seen that have been leaked, from the contenders' performances that we have seen, it doesn't seem like there is a clear take. It does seem like there is some readability. There is some, styles to figure out depending on the map, depending on the players that you have. Like it's not necessarily super rigid, right? So either New York has to have an extremely mature idea of what they want to do, and hopefully that is be proactive. I don't know if Pro-Am is going to be like the NWL for New York, just because I would probably assume that some of those players haven't arrived just yet.
Yeah.
So I again, I'll hold my end criticism until we start to really see them at the beginning of the season. But I think I'm a mix of the both of you, where it's like, yeah, I do not think Kellen is going to like last the entire season.
I wonder if they just like throw Fitz on like Zarya, if it's like a Zarya Like, I wonder if that's like something.
I mean, I don't hate that. I think I think one of the three of them probably has the chops to figure that out for the most part, I would imagine. It's there's gonna have to be a lot of problem solving for teams like this, where you just kind of have to put a lot of pressure on the shoulders of a DPS player that can kind of pick up some extra slack. And this isn't necessarily to criticize Kellen wholeheartedly, but there is something to, because we saw him play flex tanks last year. I don't know if that's even a good sample size to pull from. Yeah. You would really have to go back to like the contender season prior, and I don't even know if that's like, that'd probably be the only piece of evidence to kind of support what his hero pool really is at this point. I would probably feel safe for it to kind of sit well within some of the main, the traditional main tanks. But there is some gaps there. There are some question marks that New York is going to have to answer. And to Yiska's kind of half of the coin, there is I think tanks in general in this game and Overwatch 2 lead so much of your pace, of your tempo, that if there is kind of a language barrier, you really need to have like a clear line of like what your team is going to do. Like, are you just going to be like hyper engaging like we saw Washington kind of do last year towards the tail end of like Mag departing and them entering Jotes, and you have somebody like Assassin kind of calling and you just all in every fight and you just go? That's something I could see teams like New York really leaning into, where it's just like, we really get into like the Overwatch comms and it's just to go call a name until it dies. You know what I mean? Like, we have to go back to our roots. There's not going to be a ton of like highbrow, super crazy macro gameplay. It's going to be Kellen balls in and slams on something, and it better die in the next 10 seconds. Not even 10, maybe even 2, right?
10 seconds is a long time.
10 seconds is quite a bit of time. So you need early picks, you need high tempo, you need to be going if your team's like this, or you need to figure out a way to kind of bridge that gap, right? Like, it's difficult to kind of to do. So there are some hurdles that New York has in place. I don't think they're as good as Titans personally, but that will be kind of up for debate as we enter or exit rather Pro-Am. Is there anything else we kind of want to tackle? I know that there may be an LA Valiant roster out there in the midst. Maybe that's been confirmed by the time you hear this. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe. Who the hell knows? I mean, it's kind of we do kind of have to bring up Seoul Dynasty at some point because they did announce their team. We do have the Prophet and Prophet duo. The goat and the second coming.
It's a
of God.
Okay,
nightmare.
Okay. You're my scapegoat now. Get over yourself. Grow up. Stop crying.
What? Dude. Okay. You don't understand when you're in the trenches. And also, this is coming from someone who like had to cast Chinese contenders, by the way, where players would just like change their names to like the dumbest shit. Like there was one where it was just like V's across the board, and we just called them V's or like quad V or whatever. This is gonna be worse than that because it's like, oh man, look at Prophet here. Prophet's going in. Which one?
Nobody knows.
I love the way Prophet's playing. Which one?
Both of them. Yes.
Damn, that was really well played by Prophet. Which one? Like, it's gonna be so like, because it's not even like a thing about like confusing the audience in your mind. And I don't know if the other casters do this, but like I'd be like, I need to make sure, and I need to spend the mental RAM in the moment in like the 20 seconds I have to color cast, that I'm making sure that the audience knows which Prophet it is.
Sure, yeah, and I'm sure there'll be like nicknames given. If not somebody.
I like what Avril said with like big P, little P. That's the.
I mean, I'm here for it. Lead the charge. But we do have Big P and Little P. Prophet and Prophet as our DPS duo. Void, as I mentioned previous, unretiring to again be a solo tank. And Krillin and Lee Soo-min and our backline. I think this is a fairly. This is a team that has potential, right, Kenobi? I think that's a safe assumption.
I mean, yeah, whenever you have probably, I consider to be the greatest of all time flex tank player in Void, I think that is like you kind of like you can't really like argue if it's like a meta that's good for Void, right? But if it's like the problem would be like, okay, when we get to like Winston and it's like I know the things about like specifically in APAC, I doubt we'll see like Ryan. I usually don't really like view APAC through like, can this player play Ryan as like a lens, because I think they're just averse to that play style. They're more of like Hammond, they're more Winston oriented. So like I would consider them to be like, okay, in terms of like being able to compete, but nowhere near the level of like Spark and Dallas. Like, let's just get they do have I will admit that like whenever I see a team that has Profit on it, I can't really in good conscience ever like say that like, oh, this team is like completely out of the water, because I think that even we saw last year when like which season was it? Or not which season, what tournament did Seoul win?
Was it not the kickoff?
Well, the kickoff clash, yeah, when they won that one. Like they won that one off the back of like Profit playing like out of his skull
That's Tracer,
right?
Yeah.
Like I still remember the one pulse bomb he hit on Ilios that like won them that series in game 5. And like he's 5 years into his career at that point. So whenever there's a player like this, I can't necessarily always say that like this team is down for the count, because it does take kind of like one time where Profit just does, shows us that he goes, but Void gets like a really good match himself. And I think that's really kind of what you need, because the pieces are like fine around those two. And they like last year, I think like, even though I think that like they've downgraded on their support line because Vindame was that good, I don't want to hear anyone like no Vindame slatter on my timeline. Vindame was really, really good last season. So while I think the pieces around Profit have like gotten a little bit worse compared to what they were last year, especially losing Stalker, I think is a big deal. Losing Smurf is a big deal. Losing Iris and Vindame is a big deal. You still have Profit, and Profit is sometimes enough.
True.
The Profit, Big P.
Big P Profit. Goat Profit. Speaking of goats, Yiska, you've been badgering me all trucking year regarding this kid's legacy. He stayed in Korea. He's playing in Seoul. He's a Seoul legacy man. He's a career man there. Is this the end?
The end. I mean, I don't know. Like, dude, you now just you see, like, this is almost like a question that's just like, yes, if entropy of the universe doesn't set in beforehand, then I wonder where his career goes after this, I guess. Barring the eventual heat death of the universe, I would say that this roster is actually quite a bit better than I anticipated than it ended up being. I think they are like tied for third in APAC probably. You still have to say, like, looking at those names, like this roster is just way worse than last year's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm excited. Like, it's also always nice to have like a new fresh blood around like the GOAT, if you want, right? Like, let's say this: if he actually ends up, he doesn't have to win anything really, but he has to go far a couple of times. And if he does, then that is probably a good thing for his legacy, I would say. It's also something where at some point you can say, like, that's a player that's stuck to that club. Could become a club legend type of thing, right? But yeah, of course they also need a 6, and that will also depend.
Do.
Yeah.
A lot of that will depend on that. I think, like,
give me another tank, actually. I think I'm down. If you get like a tank, like I don't know actually though, who are the tanks that are the one.
Joe wants Top Dragon, I can tell.
I mean, I don't even hate that. I was gonna even go farther, but I have a point to precede that, right? What really kind of spaghettifies my brain, if we're keeping with like the space puns with the Seoul Dynasty for a second, is the kind of slander around Void and how poorly the Shanghai Dragons did last year. I think there are plenty of reasons why that team underperformed. I think there are very like evident performance vectors that you saw Void actually kind of excel when he was in the roster itself. We saw him still hold his own more than enough on Circuit Royal, on a lot of those just kind of like Sigma focused maps. They did, contrary to popular belief, Shanghai Dragons did end up winning. I think it was the spring summer
they
jamboree.
did,
what was it?
They did win, but I mean, let's be honest. That was like almost completely off the back of Lip. I would like.
I mean,
let's be
it's hard. It's hard not
to
be.
Lip was like at least 80% of that. I feel like.
I mean, it's true. Like when you have a meta that just like removes Fleda's kind of incessant need to be a weirdo on Tracer this season, on top of just like giving Lip his best hero, putting Void on kind of a weird pick that is kind of throwing a lot of tanks a wrench in their plans. He seemed to kind of adapt to it. I think there's plenty of reason to believe that Void is going to be able to kind of like shoulder at least most of the load. If for whatever reason there are some weird flex tank metas that
Zarya, Diva.
That's the thing, is like that's what Void has been doing for years. So I just don't see a world where it's the flex tanks that bother him. It's more so like the Winston, the Hammond, the ball stuff that like would really struggle with him or be a pain point for Soul. So in my mind, I would almost want a third DPS. And to kind of circle back to the space puns, Arnold, if you're listening, there's this kid in Contenders. I don't know if you've noticed. I know that there's there is an academy team in the works, but Alien needs a team. Period. The end. Done and dusted. If you're jealous of Infernal's star DPS in terms of MN3, and yes, I understand Zest is on that team. MN3 is just built different. You'll just believe me. Alien is the second coming of MN3, and y'all need to get with the times. This kid is bonkers. He played for T1 in the past. You've seen him play. He played with some absolute players of all time on his former team and still looked like he was dragging them kicking and screaming. This kid needs a team. Get him off Panthera. Put him on the squad. Let Prophet play some Winston at this point. Big P, not Little P. I don't even know what Little P plays, if I'm going to be completely transparent. But I know what Top Dragon plays. I know what Alien plays. Seen them do quite well. I want a third DPS. Me, personally.
Yep. I think so. That way we could have a moment where Prophet and Prophet aren't on the same aren't on at the same time.
I mean, the Big P, Little P is already catching on. I'm already kind of doing it. So. One last thing that we should touch on, because I think it does shift some view of this Western team. The Houston Outlaws did come out with my favorite 90s cartoon in signing Gargoyle. I remember it as
my
kid.
Sigma.
It's
Sigma
a
player.
double base take, Joe. Well done.
little bit. You see that shit? Gargoyle is now backing Fearless on this kind of sleeper, right? I mean, it was a great hole to fill. Not somebody I think anybody assumed was going to be signed. So Yiska, we're going to start with you. Does this change your kind of preseason ranking of the Houston Outlaws?
It helps. I think it was pretty important to have an alternative next to Fearless. I think Fearless as a main tank player is already pretty unique in what he brings to the table, mainly because it's ball. And therefore you got some leeway to figure shit out. And I think the big holes for every main tank player are certainly Diva. And then sometimes Sigma. And I would say I don't remember Fearless having played a lot of Sigma. Also, real talk, I talked to a bunch of people, Gargoyle Sigma is still really highly regarded, right? If there's a Sigma meta, you should watch out for that kid.
Well,
He's probably among the top 3.
Not even a Sigma meta, but the map pool also changes. Because on Circuit, you need a Sigma player. It's almost at this point, if you don't have a Sigma player, you just don't play Sigma. I think Shambali is kind of close to that. I don't think it's exactly the same, because I think you can play You can play Ram, you can play Winston if you are handshaking. But like a lot of the teams that are like gonna play on those like very long escort maps, like you need Sigma a lot of the time because it's just so important to just like have that control of like the off angles and the long angles and be able to have that poke. And Gargoyle, from what we remember, I mean, he was kind of just on that like Mayhem team, he was like the Sigma player, right? And kind of everything else was like lower than that. But like I imagine like this is like when I saw this initial roster from Dallas or from Houston rather, I was like, great, they got Fearless. If it's a monkey meta or a Rhine meta, mostly a monkey meta, they win. Like they'll win NA because I think Fearless is just the best player to ever touch that hero. Bar none. Gushui I think is like a close second, but like I think it's Fearless. Like if we look at the breadth of like the entirety of Overwatch, as a whole. And then, but like on the other things, like the Rhine is like okay. He had an okay Orisa back in like Chinese Contenders, but it was Overwatch 1, so I don't really know how it looks in this time. He struggled last year on like Doomfist wasn't like great. The Zarya wasn't great either. They had Hanbin like come in for that. So there are things that like Fearless just simply I don't think would be able to play a lot of the time. Which would suck because I think Houston, the rest of the roster is just like almost meta proof to an extent. Where it's like, I don't think that this fucking team, if they ever get to like, even this meta where it's like, if you see like double flex support, it's fucking over. It's like actually over that you have Violet and Shu like being able to play double flex. It's unfair that they're able to like be able to do that. And Violet, to his credit, I think, and this is something that when we look at Violet as a player and look back on him in history, I think we have kind of recently forgotten how good he has been on Lucio. And from his transition from like that flex player, right? Like we remember the Zenyatta and like what was the where he 2v1 the Mercy Zen by himself. It was, Hollywood
yeah.
In like grand finals, right?
Yeah,
Remember that Violet, obviously, but the Lucio, at least statistically, has been extremely potent for someone who had to make a role swap like that, especially last season. So I think that the Lucio isn't something I'm worried about in terms of like the main support, because now we're at kind of a point in Overwatch where it feels like main support is just Lucio player almost. And it's like the rest of it can like, because there are main supports who like can play Brig or like there are flex supports who can play Brig. We don't really know where she fits in. Mercy's like kind of still considered to be like a main support player. I don't know if Mercy's necessarily like something where it's like you need to be so like mechanically adaptable at that hero. Like you need to know the ins and outs obviously, but it's like it doesn't feel like it's really like in its own style or its own like bracket where it's like Lucio is just kind of like the one, right?
Yeah. So Houston looks potent. I mean, bar none. This is a team. Gargoyle shores up, I think, some big holes. But I hate to break it to you guys. Here's the plot twist of the episode. I actually have the Attack Titan. I've seen the future. I already know what happens. Junkbuck, I need you to listen to me. I need you to listen to me very carefully, okay? We figured this out in 2018, okay? Back when Clockwork was DMEC and Divas, back when Jake was piping down the APAC teams before they went to APAC. You need a Tracer player. I'm sorry. Happy ain't going to cut it. You already tried. That's not happening. Pelican, God bless him. He certainly tries, and he isn't bad. But you need him to do other things. Go get a top dragon. Go get a probe. You got the money. I know you do. Start the visa process now. You have a title to chase. You are fractions, millimeters, hairs away from being a title contender. You need a Tracer player. Give me a third DPS. I want to shove Outlaws in the top 3.
Do you not think that Pelican can handle like you?
It's less of Pelican can play it. I need somebody that isn't happy to also stand next to Pelican and go, okay, cool. We have a projectile Tracer meta. Oh, we have a hit scan Tracer meta. Okay, cool. Pelican and Happy should be able to cover that. There are very, very like apparent metas that this team is just going to have to force Happy to play Tracer and or Sombra. We've seen that in the past. It was not a beef.
Well, according to Junkbuck, like Junkbuck told me he thinks Happy has the best Tracer of all hit scans.
I know he does. And I know he does. I would staunchly disagree. But there again, I'm not an Overwatch League coach. We saw what happened in the past. I think Junkbuck and Happy make a lot of sense together. We saw him, I think it was in early 2020, when I think Outlaws opened the season against the Shock. We saw Happy do a lot of Hanzo shenaniganry. I guarantee you that was Junk Bucks kind of, cooking. It was beautiful cooking. Happy took to it like nobody's business, like flies on shit, right? It was great. Fantastic. Great macro. Everything was well planned. Choi Yobin's flying all over the place trying to mark this kid. It wasn't happening, right? At the echelon that Houston Outlaws can compete at, you're gonna need somebody to kind of play against the proppers, against the stalkers. Yiska, I know you're the Atlanta stan of the show, right? I don't know if you've seen maybe the scrims that have leaked. You had to have seen some of these clips. Stalker has the fucking cleanest blink melees I have ever seen anybody do on Tracer, and that's saying something. This kid is bonkers, and you're telling me Happy's gonna do that?
Yeah,
it's not fucking happening.
Look, yes, right.
He'll be fine. He'll compete. He might dumpster, I don't know, Bird Ring. God bless his soul. Grandpa Bird Ring just ain't cutting it against these kids these days. He's out here getting banned. But this is a team that could win. Unironically, they're so close to winning. They could unironically be a top team this season. You have to compete at Tracer. It has been 6-7 years, longer maybe if you, I don't know how to math, longer if you go prior to the Overwatch League. Tracer isn't going anywhere. Sombra might not be going anywhere either, weirdly enough. You need somebody to compile it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Here's the hopium. I feel like when she isn't meta, Outlaws definitely have something to.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Like currently, like their scrim results are really good right now. I think even the Eternal, I interviewed them, the entire team. Like they are so aggressive and like so on the ball and like
this meta's fucking perfect for this team.
Yeah,
like actually, like I mean, even if Pelican can't play Tracer, like, and I don't even think that like I wouldn't even say that he can't play Tracer. He just can't like I don't think he's gonna beat like Stalker or anything, but he's still fine. Like I think he's still like
if you can keep Pelican on Tracer, that'd be great. The issue is that like Pelican is kind of the flex player of this team. And is going to need to do a lot of other things, right? Like he's going to be the one shifting around because Happy is just rigid.
However, counterpoint, Fearless just plays Winston and then the game is already over, right? And you have probably two of the best flex supports in the world.
Listen, okay, I'm going to call a spade because I'm tired of like pulling punches with this goddamn game. We watched that scrim. Happy was non-existent, okay? Maybe it was early on in the scrim season. I don't know what happened. Pelicans tilt swapping to Widow. God knows what's happening there. There are going to be points in time. He also played fucking Echo, which was mind-numbing to me.
Well, yeah, but because I think he played the Echo with like the ball comp. I don't know why they played it with like Winston.
I don't know, but that's where I'm going. Okay, if we had a Tracer player, we could have Pelican play his arguably best hero in Echo, right? Like that is something that you want, right? If you have a Tracer player, you can do these other styles that would put Outlaws very clearly among the Shocks and Atlantas that are like chasing after that title. They're so close.
Yeah. No, I think like every team has these holds though. Like I think they do. If they hit
I don't know
metas,
if Atlanta does actually. Now that I genuinely don't know if they do.
Let me think.
I don't think Atlanta has like a hole, which is why I would like.
Yeah, no, it's mainly because Lib and Stalker are just like different.
Oh yeah, they'll grind out even good teams. Like they'll grind you out.
I mean, that team is just going to be like insane, I think.
Getting Darth Kenobi back on the mic here in a second. It's okay. Sorry. You're fine.
I closed the tab as I was switching over.
I've done that before. I know that pain. Yes, Atlanta is a definite favorite. It's hard to argue otherwise. As much as you can kind of nitpick on that roster, it is pretty well built. My bias aside. Other than that, for housekeeping, unless we really want to dive into the man with the biggest smile in the world in Bebe and how he's coming back for a
Bebe is signed next.
Yep, Bebe is a player of all time at this point. He apparently will also be a coach.
Of all time.
Of all time. That's true. So, without further ado, I think it's time to get into the Pro-Am prediction portion of the podcast. How many P's can I plosive?
Oh my God.
We will be predicting the top 2 from each group and filtering them into a bracket. That is my
Bracketology, March Madness. Woo!
Woohoo! You know it. A friend of mine is just bleeding money in shitty parlays. So
I also have. Oh, is that me? Am I your friend?
No, no,
lost all my parlays.
No, I know you've been betting. That was not directed at you. It's an army friend of mine. If they don't listen to this, but if they did, you know who you are. So we will be starting with Group A. I'm not going to be labeling them with any kind of traditional sports labeling because that might just send me into a Colossal Titan alt. So Group A goes as follows. We have the Florida Mayhem, the San Francisco Shock, Timeless, I believe, Trick Room, and the Vancouver Titans. We're going to start with our special guest of the episode, Kenobi. Give me the advancing teams of Group A.
I think this group is like really interesting in the sense that like I think potentially this is the strongest 3 owl teams that we have in a singular group between Mayhem, Shock, and Vancouver. One of those teams not making it feels weird to me. I think when I look at like the tier 2 teams in this group, Timeless is a team that I think they finished 4th in NA quals, and their team is like fine. I think their team is fine. They did lose like some staff that I was like. I think Ho Chi Lee is no longer their coach, which I was a bit spooked about. But I think that they have some like decent players. Like I've been a big fan of like Kuffa, for instance. I really value Kuffa as like a player, especially being able to like play on ping and be as strong as he's been. Their DPS is fine. I think Wub is getting another chance. The issue with them is like I wonder what meta they're going to play because I think this Reinhardt shit is just not going to work against like Shocker, even Vancouver. I don't know. I don't think it's going to work. So they're like the team that I think is like having the hardest time. Now for Trick Room, at the start of Pro-Am quals, I would have said that if Trick Room got this far, they would have just been like because they were kind of the ones that like pioneered in NA this like 3-2-1 May Bastion fucking slam it and we just kill shit, right? Yeah. The thing about them is that they've evolved pretty significantly throughout the tournament, and now they have another composition. They can play ball. Infected is extremely talented at ball, and I think that it's one of the things that a lot of the other teams, even like Owl teams, don't have. Like, yes, you have Shock, obviously, you have Junbin, you have Atlanta, who has Donghak. I think those are like 2 that you can point to as being like really good ball players. Infected is like a lot of the success that Trick Room had towards the back end of the bracket was a lot of it just being Infected and Boat and Pummy kind of running this ball tracer Sombra thing, and the way that Infected can like maneuver that hero from just like I'm watching this guy, like imagine Junkertown A. I'm watching him from fucking Mega go all the way to like the back stairs all the way over there, perfectly placed, perfect pile driver, and Pummy's right there to set it up. Like this team does have that ability to kind of like play ball at what I would consider to be like a very good level, especially for contenders, because one of the things contenders like NA hasn't really had, and I was talking with Hurix about this, is like Sombras. Sombras is something that like contenders NA like has, and NA in general, like besides Dante, hasn't really had a lot of, and Pummy has actually stepped up to be like pretty decent on that hero combo along with Infected. I don't know if it's enough for them to get out of the group, because of the fact that there's only 2. If there were 3 people out of this group, I would say like, yeah, I would be way more confident in saying that like Trick Room gets out. The fact is though that I think that there's 2 teams that can only get out, and right now when I look at like obviously Shock gets out at number 1. I just straight up, not gonna hold anything against this team. They are one of the teams that is going to absolutely be very good this tournament if they play to their potential. And then when I look at the other 2 teams, when I look at kind of the what is it, Mayhem, and I look at it's Mayhem, and I look at Vancouver. Yeah. That's another interesting one because neither of those, I think they'll both play Winston, if I had to guess. While I do really like Aspire and Sugar Free as like a DPS duo, Mayhem have someone. And if we do play Winston and it's someone, I can't in good conscience, if I'm like putting them between each other, I can't in good conscience pick Punk over someone's Winston. Just straight up can't. So I think it's going to be Shock Mayhem that go forward in there. And then I think I would put Vancouver third. Like I want to do like Vancouver and Trick Room like 3A, 3B.
Sure.
And then like Timeless.
Yeah. Would agree there. Would agree. Yiska, who's getting out?
I think there's no hot takes in me other than that Titans will be fourth.
Really? Who do you think that they're?
Do
you think they lose to Trick Room? Okay.
Yeah, Trick Room.
I will echo that. I think
what?
Kenobi and I. My picks, Eric, before you plug that in, I'm gonna ask you to reverse those. Actually, I think Mayhem probably advances to our first seed. I think Shock probably advances to our second seed.
Oh my god!
I don't hate this. I don't hate this.
My asterisk here is that I believe the San Francisco Shock are still playing from Korea.
Yep, that could be.
Okay.
That is going to be a significant factor. I can't say that they're out of top 2, but I think this is going to be a little bit closer than people are expecting.
Okay,
I think
that does matter. I wasn't aware of like the.
That's perfectly fair. I still think they'll probably.
I still don't think. Yeah, I don't think I'll change.
I can't imagine. I think it's not.
It's
that
closer.
I don't face. I think
it's way closer. It's closer now that they're on the pink because I think Ball, especially if they do want to play Ball, which it looks like they in like the league scrims at least. That is a hero that I think does kind of require a little bit of good ping to like pilot.
That's for
pilot.
Goddamn sure.
So I think Shock still probably get first, but that is way closer than I was saying. Since they're not.
Did you echo my Titans fourth?
Yes, I like what I see when it comes to Trick Room.
I really like Trick Room. I really do.
Banging.
I really do.
On top of that, Yiska, you know what Trick Room has? They got synergy. They got a better than all parts, better than the sum of their parts kind of storyline. CLG-esque, and I'm riding with
Trick Room. It's a power of friendship. It's literally a power of friendship team.
And they got a Pokemon name, so that's extra points in my book. So you know what? I'm putting Trick Room as an honorable third mention. That might do some upsetting. I think Trick Room is actually going to like show out and perform extremely well.
Their run was sick too. Like they 3-0'd Timeless. That I think they 3-2'd Redbirds. They took games off of Saints, which at the time with the Saints roster that they had was like almost like no one thought that was possible. It was like I think Redbirds was the only other team to like do it. So this is like a team where it's like there is a possibility, very very distant though. If no one can figure out the ball in time, they can qualify. I actually think.
I think what really to kind of second Kenobi's point that he made earlier from looking at their VOD, again, it was against NYXL, I think, on ping still. So take that with a very big grain of salt. But the one thing that I did take away was that, yes, Pummy and Infected have incredible setup when it comes to their dives. Yep. Homie can play ball. That ain't no
really
joke.
Well, I mean,
it's not like, I think they have some mechanic like upside. That's for sure. Like, I think Infected's ball is very good. I think his Ryan's actually not terrible either. I think their DPS, you're not going to grind teams out. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to like teams like Glads, teams like Atlanta, right? When you have like these big DPS presences that are just going to take over a game and just run you over, if anybody's proper. If anybody's seen like the Toronto Glad scrim where like Hydron is just like fisting this team, sometimes DPS are just going to grind you out, and like no matter how much good macro you show, like somebody's just going to hit a shot and that's just going to be the team fight, right? I don't see that with Trick Room. I see a lot of team play. I see a lot of like honestly some solid macro for an NA Contenders team. Like that's kind of surprising. So I think there's room for them to do some upsetting. Sadly, yes, I think that like from what I saw from Punk's Winston, it was a little rough around the edges. I think with Trick Room, their dive, I think that's going to be a close call with Titans. I give it to the more like holistic team, the team that has a little bit, more of a style to them that could catch, Titans off guard, could leverage some of that Rhine Bastion stuff. I guess it'll probably just be like Rhine, a Hanzo against the monkey comps that like Titans is pretty much only going to run. That would be my guess. So yeah, I think it's Mayhem. I think it's Shock. And at third, as an honorable mention for me, I think it's Trick Room. Coming into Group B, we've got the Atlanta Reign, the London Spitfire, the I believe, announced Los Angeles Valiant, which we will get into their roster in a moment. Saints and the Vegas Eternal. Now, for anybody who hasn't necessarily already been spoiled by somebody's Twitter title or Twitch stream title, the Los Angeles Valiant, as it stands currently, as of recording, is listed as Crowy, CJ, Liar, N2S, and Seeker per the valiant.overwatchleague.com/en-us/roster. That is official. That is not just me leaking this just cause. Yeah. So I don't know if that's, quick off the, lightning round take, Kenobi. Is this like, a decent team?
It's a decent team. I mean, I think Seeker is someone who I think, obviously on Boston last year, Boston was kind of just like a mess in general, but I think Seeker, like even going back to like their time on like AT, I think was someone who a lot of people looked at as being potentially like one of the next best DPS coming out of NA. So I'm happy he's on this team. I think Nos is someone who I've followed a lot during collegiate. Biggest problem I've ever had with Nos is that the inconsistency. There are times where Nos will play really, really well and like look like, kind of like world beater-esque. Even against like big teams, like last year in collegiate, like there were times where Nos would just like take over games. The problem is like getting that consistently out of him. Sure. Crowy is someone who I, also had a chance in Overwatch League. I remember, right? Like Junker Goats, I think that they were brought on for her.
I won't lie, I don't remember, but I remember his name.
Yeah, I think it was Eternal that they were brought on for, and that actually will impact my Wisp discussion. He's not on that team anymore, so that's interesting. And then I think there's nothing really that you can kind of say more about CJ in terms of their mechanical skill as like a main support, as a flex support. I think everyone kind of knows that like CJ was like the next one up in terms of like being a flex support from NA.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. CJ is coming from Saints as well, just so that like narratively we have this straight.
He was on Saints for Pro Am Quals.
Okay.
I believe he's on like Northwood signed. Like he was like a Northwood player.
Gotcha.
Because I think he was Northwood at some point.
Gotcha.
Because he was the one after Landon. So I think like he's good in terms of like just the mechanical skill. Like I think the Kiriko was something that last year in particular I think was very, very successful. And it looks like they're going to have that. This team, like overall, and then Liar, I think has been like a pretty staple player for Redbirds for a lot of his career. And based on the interviews I've had with them and based on talking with them, they do have a lot of experience in like kind of shot calling. I think obviously the best thing about this team is that a lot of these players kind of know each other already, and like have this kind of like tier 2 connection within them. So hopefully that helps in terms of like the synergistic value of like bringing this team together. It does seem a bit last minute in terms of like finding a roster, but I think that this is a team that isn't like, they're not going to be the T1W Valiant. I'm going to be completely honest with you. There's no way they're going to be like,
thank God. Maybe these kids will get paid.
Like, yeah, they're going to win matches, I think, for sure.
Hey, do you want a match?
No, I mean, that's why I said T1W Valiant. That's why I said
okay,
T1W
fair.
Valiant.
That's fair. Okay. Yiska, any takes here?
Silver 3 Molan Ran.
Don't remind
disaster.
Me. Yiska, any takes here? Do we have any opinions that we want to share before we jump into top 2s?
No, not really.
All right, Yiska, top 2. Who gets out?
Let's just put all of our ones in there. I mean,
dude. I think it's. I mean, one is Atlanta for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same.
We can all agree on that. I think they're winning it actually. Yeah, I mean, at this point, it just feels wrong to not give it to London, right?
Yeah, it's tough,
dude. I'm gonna. Yeah, I mean,
you can say Saints. I'm not mad at that.
I say
Saints.
I think I would say Saints is like the other.
Yeah.
Gotta rep. Obviously, Contenders. Gotta rep Collegiate. To an extent, because I think that the thing about London that I worry about is like, what is this meta? And like, I think to his credit last year and to the credit of the entirety of London, the way that they were able to play the Reinhardt composition did catch a lot of teams off guard. it is like you can semi-play Reinhardt at the current moment, but I think that there are teams that that play Winston, that play Ball, that are gonna be a lot better at like beating Reinhardt compositions. And like then when Hottie like has to move over to like Winston or move over, I don't think like Ball is like anything we'll see from Hottie. That's not like something that I would expect too much of. But like, you know, am I like even like when I'm looking at like Hottie versus Mikey in terms of that matchup, like I think Mikey, even from like last year in the grand finals, like Mikey's Winston wasn't like great. Like it wasn't fearless, obviously.
No.
But it was still like
Wasn't bad.
decent. He's still like held up for 7 games in that grand final off of like not playing like a lot of the time
Agreed,
before in
yeah.
the playoffs, and they were still like splitting time with Kaluj. He looks really good. I like in the streams that I was looking at, this Saints roster looks like they are just completely like as a unit, tightly bound. Mikey has a lot of really good control over his Winston play. Losing CJ is a big deal, I will consider. However, I do think Squid is an ample replacement for him. He's like another, you know, really talented, talented, gifted mechanical flex support. I think can fill the role of the Kiriko as well. So they don't lose too much in that regard. And you have obviously Tree and King, who I think are a very, very potent DPS duo that I would put up against a lot of the other DPS duos that we have in this group, except for Atlanta, where I think Lip and Stalker are just probably, I mean, based on the scrims I've seen, I don't know if there's a DPS duo I want over them besides like maybe like Shy and Leave or something, where it's like they look incredible. So I have Saints going second in this group. It'll be close though.
Yeah, I would agree there. I think I have London advancing in a very tight series. I think it's going to probably come down to London versus Saints. Who wins that, you know, kind of determines who grabs that second seed. I think the other two teams are very beatable, to put it, you know, nicely. The big criticism that I have for Saints is yes, there is some team shifting. That's where I have to worry a little bit. But for London, they don't get out of this, you know, completely unscathed either. You know, when you talk about the Reinhardt comp, I do believe that Backbone is not with the team as of yet. I believe that he is still waiting for his visa. So unless London wants to play their May on ping, which probably isn't ideal, there could be some pain points there. I do expect, I don't even care at this point. Like I do expect Lethal to actually look quite good. And I think people are severely underrating Sparker as, you know, a Western talent that, you know, should be up there amongst, you know, some of the best hit scans that we have in the league. So I think it's narrow. I think it's a tight game, but I have to give it to Christopher. I have to give it to London. This is a team that has consistently impressed and, you know, put up some numbers. But I do have like Saints as an honorable, very, very honorable third. I think Tree is going to show up and really make a name for himself and be the hot rookie for next year. So that is going to be Group B. Going into Group C, we have the Boston Uprising, the Los Angeles Gladiators, Team Peps, Washington Justice, and Wisp. Kenobi.
I can't wait for Joe.
Oh, it's a bloodbath. This is my bloodbath.
Crazy group. One, dude.
I don't know who makes this.
This is an interesting group in the sense that like Joe and I have had a discussion about like what we consider to be like groups of death, and like the definition Joe is given, if I'm not wrong, is like it's very scrappy and you kind of don't know who's gonna win. It's very
don't make me Berthold this podcast. I'll arm in this bitch.
And I think you're right though, because I think all of like when I look at these teams, I think the one thing that I like about this team is like if I was just going strictly off of paper, it would be Boston Glads very easily.
Sure.
The Glads just it's a scrim obviously, and I don't want to put like an incredible amount of stock into a scrim. However, boy, dude, it did not look good when they played Saints. It did not look good at all, and it's hard to get that out of my mind. And like the DPS is like I like Yaki. I think he's very good on his like particular heroes, but I don't know. Like, I don't even know what the situation is with Kai either. They're like a big question mark to me, especially with Dante solo tanking. I know Dante's like very like good at like making this transition over, but again, you know, Ball. What do we do with that? Ball's gonna be important in a lot of these group stages, I think. And when I look over at like Uprising, I'm like a little bit more I'm a little bit more confident on them than I am on Glads with what the meta is shaping out to. So I have Boston 1, and I can't put I have to put Glads 2. I just feel like I can't see a universe where Kev does not make it does not make it out of it. It would be shocking to me if that were.
All right, Yiska. Who's making it out?
Oh, dude, like this is almost entirely, and I actually don't know. It's almost entirely contingent on who from Glads is actually an A. If it's all of them, you probably would have to silently say Glads. I have a feeling that that's not the case.
Yeah.
And if that's not the case, it might just be Washington based on recent scrim results. From what I've heard, Alpha is just...
He's good, man. He's good.
Joe was right. Joe was right about Alpha E last year.
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean, Joe? Hold on. I've been an Alpha E truther from the get.
Okay. Kenobi gets some love here. That's for sure.
Okay, my point is, like, we had this draft, and I joked on Joe for first picking Alpha E.
I took Alpha E twice first.
When are you
that's
learn
Papiche
about,
as well, but
when are you going to learn about your disdain for the Chinese scene? Like, I just don't. When is it going to happen to you? When are you going to gather?
When they win anything ever at all?
They did. Did Team CC not win Gauntlet? Yiska?
In 2020, when like. They temporarily were good, yes.
Oh yeah, temporarily, not like the entire year where they like absolutely dumpstered every single Korean team that got put in front of them. With by the way, Stalker was on that Gen G team that they dismantled, and Farway literally put him in the dirt on Tracer, as in Yada, throughout the entirety of that grand final.
How is every word you're saying cope when you're talking about tier 2 tournaments? Just win something at an international level, for Christ's sake. No, Gauntlet is not an international tournament. Eat my ass.
I don't know. There were two different countries in it. I don't know. Sorry.
Oh yeah, crazy. Yeah, like I guess I don't know. Like if my
it was international.
Yeah, and if I fucking take my fucking bar club and drive over to the Netherlands as an international football game, fuck off.
All right, Yiska, who's getting it out?
Okay, that's okay, here's my strength of the moment. Okay, everyone wants to say the hot take justice. I'm actually too hipster for that. I am actually.
Are you gonna say Peps? Are you gonna go like the
No, part of me even wants to say Glads and Justice just to be different. Because I think there's also something to be said about Boston starting a little slow. Nah, I gotta be. I'm too much in love with being right, so I gotta go Boston. Boston Justice, fuck it.
Fuck you. That's what I was gonna say. As much as if you've perused our community Discord, I have been very critical of the OWL teams in Group C. I think the Boston downsides are quite not so great, even though that this team on paper should be like kind of pooing on everybody. Not seeing it. That being said, there is not like a very clear ball player in this group. I don't think it's Dante. I think Glads probably are not all in NA, which is going to be a severe detriment, even though, like, if they were, I would say that they could easily grind out some of these teams. And if Alpha Yi is actually just pooing on kids, I think that might be enough. That being said, my interesting takes actually come outside of the top two. I know the placings that don't matter. I would actually say Peps might actually finish above Glads. That would be my prediction for Group C.
Oh,
I really don't like what I'm seeing out of Glads. I do not care for Yaki. Individually, I think he's very talented. This team is facing a reckoning that I've been talking about and hinting about for ages. This team is a temporal struggle. Nobody's on the same page. Dante is still learning how to play tank. Yaki is going to be a big detriment. I would not be surprised if we see a lot of Kai in Pro-Am and maybe at the start of the season, just kind of trying to get Yaki under control in terms of just like play style. And I think Peps might come in and do some little cheesy stuff and might catch some teams off guard. So that would be my prediction for Group C is Peps actually finish third. And Glads might be a little bit disappointing. Then...
Oh, I do want to give a shout out to Wisp, though. I think specifically someone to look out for is Rocket.
True.
I think
Good
there
tracer.
are a lot of people, very good tracer, and if tracer's like as prevalent as we kind of think that they're going to be, there will be times where Rocket does like pop off against some probably pretty good owl level tracer talent. So just make sure to keep an eye on for that. Even though I think the team, especially after losing Crowley, I'm like a lot lower on going into this. But Rocket is someone who I think does definitely deserve attention going in.
I like it. It was definitely somebody that, impressed me when it came to quals. Wisp was the rocket show. So shout out to them. Group D, we have got the Houston Outlaws, the New York Excelsior, Red Birds Esports, Toronto Defiant, and Twisted Minds. Now, this is a weirdly competitive group. Well, okay, competitive is the wrong word.
Group of death.
This is actually kind of a strong group, I would say. Yiska, we'll start with you. Who's making it out?
I mean, easiest choice of my life. The question is first and second, and even that's an easy choice. So it's just Outlaws and Toronto.
Yeah.
True. Lock them in. Kenobes.
I have Outlaws Toronto as well. I think it's kind of... This is the group that I personally think has the most like breadth between like all five of the teams. I think this is like the most talent that we have as like between all of them. Even concluding the contenders. I am like slightly worried about Redbirds and like their strength because I love Redbirds, talk them up a lot and what they've done with like their program and like the players that they've been able to make and like their success last year during Run It Back. I love Vision. If you read the article about the promo players that Joe made, I think he's one of the most clutch players that we have.
You're Iguodala, right?
I want Iguodala. He's my Iguodala. I want him taking that last shot, Fate of the Universe on the line. Losing Lethal was a big deal though. And I think it's like a very big deal. Lethal was statistically an anomaly on that team. And while I think the rest of the team like did a very good job of like having their own moments, it would be like remiss of me and to like not discount how like important Lethal was. Like he was one of the most important parts, if not the most important part. Also losing Liar, a lot of the times when like Redbirds was strong, it was because they had this like 5-man communication structure that was like and they would talk to each other and they would have really good synergy. Losing Liar breaks another part off of that with already losing Lethal. So I'm like way less excited for this Redbirds team in this group than like I would have been if like Lethal was still there or something like that, right? If they had all 5 pieces from last year of Run It Back. They'll probably do like okay. I think they'll have some moments where like I think Vision will pop off. I think Gig will probably come in and play decently well on like Winston and Ryan and stuff like that. And then looking at, but I don't have them like, I mean maybe they beat like NYXL and stuff like that, but they definitely won't like be anywhere the top 2. I think it should be Toronto divided. And then Twisted Minds is like a team where it's like, I think stylistically, when I look at the team, like the EU kind of is like evolved from this style where it's like a lot of Reinhardt. There still is that, with Team Peps and like there is a lot of the rush style, but I think it's being taken over a lot by this kind of flex tank, very aggressive. I think a lot of the Saudi Arabian players, for instance, are like playing a little bit more fast tempo. There's not more of that like rush. I think the DPS for Twisted Minds are really good. There's potential for them to just like completely catch someone off guard by like playing Junker Queen Pharah or Pharah Diva or something like that because they have LBVD7, who is essentially like a lot of people talk about like him, compare him to like Yazan, who is another Saudi Arabian Pharah player. What I like about LBVD in particular is that his hero pool is a little bit wider than Yazan, and so I think that like I would have LBVD as like the quote unquote better player. Not that Yazan isn't one of the most mechanically gifted.
More of a complete player.
Yeah, more of a complete player is a better way of putting it. And like I think Slay, even last year I think was one of like you look at Slay and Slay was one of the best flex supports that was in EU completely, just from the mechanical aspect, the Kiriko, the timing, all of it. Slay has been very good, so that's another person to look out for. But Twisted Minds will probably like win a game or two off of like stylistic differences. Maybe take a series off of like a New York. Maybe take one off of Toronto if Toronto isn't respecting it. But I think beyond that, this should be pretty easy. Houston-Toronto too.
I'm going to echo that. I think it's pretty clear Houston, Toronto are just kind of a league above. But the spicy takes come outside of the top two. I think Twisted Minds is probably going to advance, or not advance, but be third in the group.
I wouldn't be shocked.
I think Redbirds losing a lot of players hurts them. I think New York playing on ping, obviously not great. Twisted Minds has a clear style. They have, done extremely well. I think they have a lot to prove. And depending on if I believe they won't be playing on too much of ping. That's a big asterisk there. We'll have to see. By the time this airs, we might have a better idea. Hopefully. I would say that Twisted Minds advance. So now we get to the bracketology section. We're going to be going through this individually. So we'll probably start with Kenobi's bracket because he is the guest of the hour. And then we'll go from there. So Kenobi's bracket starts with the San Francisco Shock playing against Saints. What do you have, Kenobi?
Shock wins that, I think. I mean, this would obviously change now that when I see the teams play.
Sure.
But I think if we're just going, if it's there's no problem with terms of ping or anything like that, and I'm seeing Shock play to their potential, Shock should probably take that. I think Saints probably play it a little bit closer than people would be expecting. Just if you were just be looking at it's a perennial OWL grand finalist versus a college team, right?
Sure.
I think it'll be a lot closer than that would indicate if you're just looking at it from that mainframe. But I think it's probably Shock 3-1. If I'm putting a score on it. Sure. Then next it's Boston versus Toronto. That'll be close. I really, really like Toronto a lot. I do like them, but I don't know if I can see them beating Boston, especially if we're are trending towards Winston meta, where I think that what's with those facial expressions, bro? Joe, I think that Boston, especially I can't bet against Smurf on Winston. I feel that's
fair. That's fair.
That's a bit scary of a situation for me. Atlanta Houston match of the tournament.
True.
100%. I don't even. It's this should be what I imagine grand finals would be. I would want to see a best of 7 between these two. I think it's Atlanta. I really do. I really think ball is going to be important, and ball is something that I trust inherently with Donghack more so than I would with anything that Dallas has now or Houston has. Now, if it is we've handshaken to the fact that we're just going to play Winston all the time, then I would see an avenue where Houston wins. But based on what I know and what I've seen, Atlanta wins that. It's very close. That probably goes all 5. Glad's Mayhem. Our Gladson, our Gladson, and I wasn't aware that they just weren't all here. So I don't know, maybe if they're not here, then Mayhem has a chance of winning that. But I think if I'm saying everyone on Glads is in the room in NA, Glads would probably take that over. Mayhem.
All right, so your quarterfinals would look like San Francisco Shock playing the Boston Uprising. I guess these are semis. Never mind. We went through quarters. Yeah, so the semifinals are Shock Boston and ATL Glads. Who's got what?
Shock Boston, ATL Glads. Well, ATL wins. ATL just goes to the grand finals.
Okay.
Boston Shock, I would be. I'm basing this off of there's no problems at all with Boston's comm structure or anything, and they're playing just the standard style. I think it's close. I think probably Shock wins, and then we get Shock Atlanta Grands, and then I have Atlanta win. And I think it actually will probably be way not as close as it was when they played here. I think Atlanta is going to run through this.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect meta for them. I think it is entirely too difficult to not see Atlanta just march to the finals. Yiska, you want to head your bracket up next?
Can do, but I have to do it from memory because I currently can't see.
That's fine.
Eric's
That's
stream.
fine.
Okay, so first off, we have had
You have Shock
Shock
London.
London,
First.
yes. I mean, this is tough just because of the ping issue.
Sure.
I think that like it's feasible to say that London could win this, but I think you should probably just not bet on that.
It's like a 70-30.
Yeah. So I'm going Shock there. Then we go into Boston, Toronto.
Toronto. Yep.
That's a very interesting one. So here's my belief. I think Toronto has been scrimming for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Scrimblocks have them up. I think that's a Toronto. Then we move into Atlanta, Houston. I echo what Kenobi said and say that's one of the games of the tournament for sure.
Yeah.
I take ATL. And then we go into Mayhem Justice.
How much do you believe in Alpha E? How? You don't believe in it.
I don't know.
No,
Hard. It's more like Ben Best.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in someone. Yeah. I also believe, like, in that. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think Mayhem. We talked about it a bunch, but like, it's a team for sure that, could just, do a lot. So we'll see.
So your semifinals would go as follows. You have the San Francisco Shock playing the Toronto Defiant, and then you have Atlanta Mayhem. Let's start at the top.
San Francisco Shock.
Do the boys got it?
Great. Dude, if Toronto wins that matchup, ooh, boy. Ooh,
The boys got it? Can Kaluj get an all kill versus his old team?
I think like this is actually the perfect storm for the Defiant here in this bracket. I feel like like if okay, real talk. This is all about ping, right?
Yes, yeah.
If Shock is home, this is one of the two S tier teams in this league. Maybe I could even be convinced that Houston should also be part of that. But that the ping disadvantage is so major that I would just go Toronto instead. And then it's ATL against Florida. Florida, like. Like we think you're going to do very well. This is ATL after all, and ATL is going to take this one.
Yep.
True. So you got ATL winning it. I'm gonna start there. I think unironically this is a perfect meta for Atlanta. There is no shot that anybody else but Atlanta wins this. I will eat a shoe live on stream if they don't win. It is that it feels that cut and dry. However, I would say my bracket.
What kind of shoe?
Whatever shoe I've got laying around.
Get a sandal.
Sure, I'll get a.
This man's about to eat a fucking croc on stream. Crazy.
Hey, I'll get a Lightning McQueen croc just for you, bud. Cars 3. That's what your bracket's gonna look like. Anyways, Florida Mayhem, London Spitfire starts my bracket. I've got Mayhem advancing. I think this is probably another sleeper team of the season. They were the team last year that I think was sleeper. I think this is another one that I think has just been like kind of casually overlooked when it comes to just potency on paper. Big things coming from Mayhem. Coming into Boston, Toronto next. I think this is a Toronto Ollywop. I think they completely run all over all these old geriatric fucks. These kids are going far. If I had Yiska's bracket, I would unironically put Toronto to pretty much just run over Shock. The ping is going to be a significant downgrade for them. Like I get proper as a nut. What happens when you're playing high tempo and you don't want that. To the same note, I don't know if San Francisco gets out of Justice alive to that same degree, right? I think that is an upset potential game. I do not have it within me to say that the Washington Justice beats the San Francisco Shock, so I'll have Shock advancing in a very narrow game, losing to the Atlanta Reign. And then I would have probably Toronto beating Mayhem, and then Atlanta beating the Toronto Defiant to win the Pro-Am. So yeah, it is too, the path is clear. The Luke Skywalker vectors are set. The Death Star is going to be blown up. This team
I just
dominates Pro-Am.
I don't get the disdain for Boston, especially because of like if the thing we're talking about is like if we do get to like Winston meta and do it the handshake, I think ball eventually like at the end will become like the most important thing.
Sure.
Like by the end of the tournament, I think like because we're gonna see Atlanta play it because they have Donghak, who is an extremely gifted.
Yeah.
Right. That's the biggest thing for me. But like, if it's like Winston mirror, and we've got like Smurf, and we've got like Smurf against Kaluge, like is that something like and Austin's playing to their like, and it's Tracer, it's fucking Reaper. I mean, if you're a striker, he's won 2 championships on that hero.
Sure.
Just like, I don't get where the trepidation comes from on Boston in particular.
It's less of trepidation and more of like, I think Hydron's mega slept on.
I do too. I also
agree.
agree.
To fist some teams.
Yes,
and I think they have like a very like, they don't. There's a lot less questions for me when it comes to Toronto, because I think that's the big question is like, okay, Boston, Toronto, we have it all in our brackets that way.
I think
like,
during the season, it's going to be like, inevitably, I think Toronto will be like punching way up than like people think. I think Toronto is going to be like a team that in the regular season will make a lot of noise that people aren't going to be expecting. I think with this like American Tornado core, I think people forget like how good that team was, and people can say like, oh, it's tier 2, whatever. That team was dominant for a very long time with that same.
Yep.
And you don't get to like dominate as hard as they did, and as long as they did without being very good.
It's true, and that's again, I would echo a lot of those same points when it comes to a Bird Ring coming off of retirement, Decay, who, let's face it, hasn't necessarily been not a problem child when it comes to certain rosters in the past. Same goes for Striker. The rest of the pieces, I like how this team looks on paper. I don't trust this team. This is like the Hangzhou Spark of the West. Right? I don't trust this team as far as I can throw them. I will be happily proven wrong if they show up against the Toronto Defiant and look gangbusters. I have to see that first. I have to see what they look like in groups to trust them.
I mean, yeah, in groups, if you're right, and in groups they just like look terrible.
If they're dropping games to Wisp and Peps, bro.
Yeah, then it's just that. Yeah, then miss this bracket. I don't even have the of course, but like,
I mean, it's hard to not look at that team and kind of get a little excitable.
Like this team, like I mean, when even like it's just the current meta like feels like it's perfect for them too.
Sure.
And to an extent, where it's if it's,
I would tend to agree. I think the one thing that like just on paper kind of screams out in front for me is just Toronto's pace. You know what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be a ton of like highbrow macro play. They're gonna get on top of you and they're just gonna fucking just put you through the grindstone, right? They're gonna be milling your deck. They're gonna be ripping cards off and throw them in the graveyard. They're gonna be burning your land. Like
playing blue.
It's not. They're not playing blue. They're playing
blue, red.
They're speeding that shit. They're speed running these games. It's not. It's gonna be high tempo. And if I'm parsing through what Yiska's saying correctly, which kind of is evidence to my point or my suspectory. That Boston may not be as good as we might think they should be. I would trust Toronto with that pretty convincingly, I would say. I think this is, in a weird way, I think we're going to be kind of robbed of like the fun AT like Toronto hype, because I think people really get on the bandwagon from their Pro-Am performance. I think they kind of set an expectation for themselves with this preseason event. As much as I don't think that's necessarily fair, because I have a number of reasons, but that's neither here nor there. Yiska, any final points before we end this?
I think like Eric made a good point that, I mean, this is a drawn out tournament, right? We don't know when some of those teams will figure out their traveling situations and visa situation, whatever might be holding them back. So this definitely could change it. I could also totally see Shock going much further and we get a dope shock against Atlanta final. I actually really hope that actually happens, which would be a great foreshadowing of the season.
Yeah.
I realize this looks a little sad that only Kenobi has like Saints going through as the only contenders team out of group stage play. I hope we get a little bit more upset potential. I will say, even if it happens, like keep in mind this is best of threes, which is pretty trash. So why push, dude? Why you put push in best of 3 as well? Like, come on, man.
Because you can't tie it.
Can you tie escort? Why not tie escort then? Like,
True,
you can't tie. You can. I mean, it's very hard.
Theoretically, you can, but
theoretically, you can also.
Okay,
weird.
But theoretically, you can also tie push by never moving the board once.
Of course, yeah, but let's
that one's a little bit hard to do, but
yeah, I mean,
I've seen escort tie a singular time.
It's true.
In the time that I've been watching Overwatch.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of the game mode selection. I understand why we had to do best of 3 because the idea here is like, if you were to go best of 5, then it blows out the scope of this tournament, right? I'm already kind of surprised that it is several weeks long, so that contributes here. I understand. I feel like, okay, let me close with this statement, right?
Okay.
I feel like a lot of the problems we are currently facing in the Overwatch scene is like this joke of the guy that goes to the doctor and everything hurts. Like, doctor, like, if I push here, it hurts. If I push here, it hurts. If I push here, it hurts. And it turns out this guy's finger is broken. Our finger is resources. It's money. Everything that's wrong right now comes down to resources, revenue streams, money, and that translates to production value, that translates to team sizes, that translates to promotional content, that translates to the amount of people that are able to work on this product, to make dope shit. All of this comes down to that. And there's only so much sympathy I can have, or there's only so much you can blame on the esports winter. This is like a very much an Overwatch thing. So, yeah, I feel like from that point of view, I understand. I also think I'm personally a fan of the Pro-Am as a concept. I think like this cross-promotional tier 1, tier 2 play has been pushed for a while. I was looking forward to that always. But yeah, I'll be watching. I'll be selectively watching, I will say.
True.
And hopefully we get some banger matches out of it that raise the appetite. Hopefully we get surprised by the viewership that's going to be here. I'm not sure if there will be viewership at Census. I believe there's currently drops active for Overwatch anyway. Is that true?
On Twitch, yeah, there are.
On Twitch, right? So maybe that helps. I wouldn't know though. And yeah, we get some miracle upside, but yeah, I don't know. That's basically my bottom line. And great.
Based, valid, true pilled posting, I would say. The Overwatch League is real, and we're heading into the 2023 season. Hopefully,
it's tomorrow. Well, today, I guess. If we're
today, and I don't know, preseason. Do we count the preseason in the NFL? I don't know. I'm not meat sports pilled, so I feel like this is like a preseason. I'll depart on 2 notes. I think I think the Atlanta Reign is going to be hyper giga juiced off their Pro-Am win. I think that those expectations are going to be significantly reined in depending on what patch we play. Because I don't know if there's going to be a team at this tournament that even kind of holds a candle. The second you kind of remove the actual perfect meta for this team away from them, that's going to be kind of the true test. So I would hedge expectations If Atlanta, for whatever reason, fumbles the guaranteed biggest bag I've ever seen in my life next to the Shanghai Dragons of 2021, there is red alert. Sound the alarms, play the National Weather Committee drill. There's a tornado in the area, and it might be American. I don't know. Right? Shit's wacky if that's the case, right? And we will have to talk about that long and hard, Yiska. I don't even remember what I was gonna say. Oh, yeah, I get maybe our resource button is broken, right? We've hit the Coomer button one too many times, and we're out of juice. Okay,
Coomer button.
Blizzard, you're not getting out of this one without a little criticism, and it's the same piece of criticism we have been screaming at you for since, I don't know, forever. Communicate, please. Nobody's asking at this point for like high quality content. Nobody's asking for any kind of content. The fact that nobody knows what the fuck is going on a day, 2 days, a week out, that's actually unacceptable. Someone somewhere is dropping this ball. And I understand there's probably not a ton of you. If there is any of you listening to this, there's probably not a ton of you. Blizzard is historically rife with bureaucracy, which I understand. Something's got to give. Something's got to give somewhere. Some not credit, but like something needs to be delegated, right? There seems to be a funnel blocking a lot of shit from passing and going through and being announced or just given to people. That's just not cool. And if that doesn't shape up, we're going to have some problems. If you thought your finger was broken, maybe there's some more stuff that gets a little broke. I don't know. Maybe there's another lawsuit on your table. You already got one cooking, so maybe let's not do another. That being said, is there any final thoughts, Kenobi? I hate to.
I don't know.
Get a little spicy.
Let's
on
implicate him. Implicate him.
I mean, obviously, the Pro Am is very exciting. There's a lot of teams coming up.
Yes, I do.
How excited are you?
I do think the Pro Am is great in the sense that I think one of the things that I really value when it comes to like the pipeline of like the path to pro is like the storytelling aspect of it. And I think that it's good that we're going to be having these players specifically, like the teams. I'm not so like it doesn't to the teams. It doesn't really like too much matter to me, except for like Team Paps is like kind of like the one where it's like, yeah, this is like a team who is kind of like its own entity, and I'm interested to see. But most of it's about like the players getting their chance to like shine on a stage. Like Rocket might not get out of groups, but Rocket can perform really well against Tracer and make a name for him, or against like big Tracers and make a name for himself. Tree can do. There's a lot of players who I think that just watching them play and giving them to a bigger audience, should they ever end up going to the Overwatch League, and be like, hey, I remember seeing that person on Pro Am, and I remember like how they were playing, and I remember them playing against like the Overwatch League teams and like playing pretty well. So I think that it's a great thing to help bridge the gap between what is considered like the Overwatch League and then like going back to like Contenders, because there has sometimes been that gap where it's like the Gauntlet I think was like one, but it's like this is like the first time where it's like really like front and center, and I really like it, and I'm really excited for it as someone who has been doing tier 2 for 5 years. Oh my god. But it's really it's something that I think I am going to really be excited for and watch.
True. Hopefully there's some content coming from you on that front, because I know this has definitely been something that you're jazzed about.
Yeah.
So, stay tuned to Kenobi's channels, because maybe there'll be content. Maybe there won't be. I'm not foreshadowing anything. There may be, I don't know.
Actually.
I'm just saying. We'll find out.
I might write once we get to the once we get to the
there might be some writing.
Are you just like Amber locking him into having to make content?
Maybe.
He should.
Nice.
It's a good idea. He should.
I'm the alien holding the gun to his head, making him pick Iguodala. It's me the whole time. It's me, Dio. I don't even watch that show, and I know the meme. Yiska, what else are we burning this week?
Well, I just released a report. People can read on that. I did an interview with fuck me, dude. Like
You went the whole show without doing it.
Fucking Vegas Eternal. So okay, I was pleasantly surprised. Like they are super easygoing. I think that interview turned out well. If you, I felt like Empress was very honest. The team was like vibing well.
Shout out Empress.
Of course, also thanks for Valiant for making that happen. I don't know. I'm really in love with this team interview format, and I'll definitely try to keep it going until we start with the season, and then it probably gets a lot harder. Unless, and I think that would be super pog, if I could convince some of the teams to do team-wide post-match interviews, but I don't think that's in the cards, really. I don't think we can emotionally regulate folks into doing that on a consistent basis. Well, I'll try.
Yeah. I get that. All right. 288 with Overwatch's greatest warrior.
What about you, Joe?
I'm writing thumbnails and listening to the AOT soundtrack before I ult on somebody, okay?
And gets
that's my week.
And gets
what seasoning are you gonna pick for your shoe that you might have to eat?
My seasoning?
Yeah, you're not gonna eat it.
I don't know.
You gotta season it.
You should bake it.
Just a raw
you
shoe.
should bake it.
I'm not baking a shoe.
Put ketchup on it.
Why
something.
not?
I'm not ruining my oven.
No.
I'll
can
eat a raw shoe.
Bake something that looks like a shoe, and the
Put it on the
punishment
grill,
is
brother.
that it can't be bread.
Yeah,
Can it be a cake?
It could be a cake.
Oh yeah, bake it into a cake.
But it has to be one of those cakes that the guy on
looks like
TikTok, like the chef, could comment on and go like, "Pog, that's a 12
Just
or
fry
10,
it. Put it in
13.
some batter and fry it. Good old American.
We'll see. I will eat a shoe that may or may not be real if the Atlanta Reign does not win. I will do that. That is something you can count on. But yes, that's pretty much it. That's it for me. That's it for the show. 289 coming in middle of Pro-Am. We will see what the initial stage of the group stage looks like. Stay tuned, stay posted. All that good stuff. Like and subscribe. Leave the comments. Help the algorithm. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Peace.